Thank you, everybody, for joining our webinar series today. We appreciate you all joining the third episode of this series. Our first episode, we covered trends in the public sector. And for our second episode, we covered the AWS Public Sector Summit. And today, we're excited to have Doug Gartner from AWS here. So, Doug, how are you doing?
Good. How's it going, Tate?
Pretty good. Thank you for taking some time here and joining our series. Just a quick call out to anybody who's listening to this, any feedback or any topics that you want us to cover in future episodes, please just let us know. So appreciate everybody for the time here, and let's go ahead and kick off. Doug, if you wouldn't mind just doing a quick introduction of yourself, and we can kick things off from there.
Sure. Thanks for joining, everybody. My name is Doug Gartner. I am a principal solutions architect here at AWS. My focus is on customers, agencies, and partners in the justice and public safety space. For us, we kind of split that up into four mission focus areas. We have 911 and emergency communications, which is kind of, also fire and EMS. And then we have law enforcement, courts, and corrections. So those four areas of focus, I'm kind of the technical crosscut that supports all the mission systems in those areas. I've been here about 7.5 years, spent a number of years at the intelligence community before that. Looking forward to the discussion today.
Awesome. Thank you. So to kick things off with, just curious from your perspective, what are some of the major pain points that you're hearing from your customers?
Yeah, I mean, we hear a lot about this sort of staffing shortage that's existing. And a few years ago, we went out and traveled to a number of different PSAPs and sheriff's departments and PDs and asked the question like, hey, what challenges are you dealing with? And overwhelmingly, we heard that staffing shortage was a challenge. And it's really around this idea of, our existing people are doing so many other missions outside of their primary focus area. And so it leads to a lot of challenges with sort of retention and burnout and turnover. And, they're continually asked to do more with less. And so, yeah, I would say primarily we hear about staffing shortages. We also hear about some technology gaps and challenges, but overwhelmingly from across those vertical areas, staffing seems to be the biggest pain point.
Sure, the main thing. That's very interesting. You've been at AWS for over 6 years now, probably coming up on 7 years. I'm curious how you've seen your customer base and the agencies that you've worked with, how they've changed over the 7 years. Like, what are some of those trends? Clearly, staffing shortages is something that maybe has been an issue for a couple years. Maybe it's something that's a little bit newer, but just curious how you've seen the trends change over your 6 years at AWS.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, when I first joined, there was a lot of pushback around some of the foundational components. So things like, hey, is the cloud secure enough? Does it meet our compliance and regulatory needs? Is it highly available enough? And through concerted effort, we kind of did a lot of enablement and education around things like compliance and regulatory needs, around security of the cloud, around high availability, and making sure that applications that are built in these mission critical areas meet those needs from a high availability perspective. So those concerted efforts, while we started, there was a lot of pushback and hesitancy, have kind of changed. And I think also the forcing function there has been a bit on this ask to do more with less. Is like, okay, at some point I'm going to have to be able to augment my daily tasks with more technology, because otherwise I'm going to be overburdened with those administrative tasks. And so I think we've seen the shift from, a lot of hesitancy and pushback to, okay, tell me how to use it and how I can configure it properly to meet my needs.
Sure, totally. That's interesting, because I think when a lot of conversations started with, 6 or 7 years ago, customers just starting on the cloud, like you mentioned, you get a lot of more of those, foundational questions on how you can get started, how you can scale on the cloud. A lot of those basic questions that you need to educate customers on and agencies to make sure that they're satisfied with what AWS can provide. And then things change, then all of a sudden many agencies are on AWS and they move into that next phase of whatever that is. And we're hearing a lot about generative AI within the market. And just curious from your perspective, being within the public sector space and what AWS is doing in the market, what are some of the things you've heard from customers on how they can best implement this technology?
Yeah, we hear the same. I mean, generative AI is everywhere, and our customers are asking a lot of good questions about it. And we're, kind of trying to meet the asks there in many cases. I think it's really important to highlight that we've been doing AI for a long time, but it's this kind of shift towards generative AI and being able to build new content and to generate new things and listen to trends and respond accordingly. And so I think a lot of the questions are like, what is it, right? And how can I make sure I'm putting the right guardrails around it? And how can I make sure that I'm using it responsibly and ethically? And so there's a definite need and a definite ask to use it to kind of make those administrative tasks, or again, make those secondary mission focus areas easier for the overburdened staff, but doing it in a way where it's sound and it's meeting those needs. So overall, I would just say that it's going to continue to evolve rapidly, and we're going to try to match that pace, but we're going to, along the way, apply the right guardrails and the right approaches to make sure that we're starting small, and that we're peeling off the things that really have the most impact, as opposed to just applying it in a blanket fashion.
Totally. I think that's spot on. It's interesting, we're 3 years into the Gen AI phase, or the next stage of where the technology sector is going. And a lot of clients that we work with, they started with, hey, where can we get started? Where are some of the proof of concepts and pilots that we can try and begin with to be able to leverage this? And over the past couple years, then now the question is, okay, how are we going to start to get value from this as quickly as possible? And when we're moving past that stage from just a pilot or a prototype to actually, deploying these systems. And so it's just interesting. I think for that next phase, just curious your thoughts. As you work with many different ISVs, many different SIs, what are some of the cool things that you've seen, or maybe a customer story that you can share, or really just any thoughts on where you see the sector going over the next 18 to 24 months?
Yeah. There's a lot there, right? I would just say in general that we love builders at AWS. So wherever builders are, we're gonna support those builders. It so happens that in our space, the primary builders exist in those partners. And so we really support a lot of the partners to be able to deliver the value to the agencies themselves. A couple of cool mission stories. We have a lot of PSAPs and ECCs using the non-emergency solution that we developed. And really that was a result of like, hey, we get a lot of these 10-digit calls, we get a lot of administrative calls, and we don't really have the bandwidth anymore to be able to answer them all in a timely fashion. So being able to use some of these new generative AI tools to augment those resources and maybe give those answers to callers without having to overburden a short-staffed call taker. So that's a cool example. We also see things in the augmented report writing world for officers. We're seeing things in, just chatbots in general to be able to ask questions of your policy documentation. So I think, again, that space is evolving rapidly, and we're going to see more and more cool use cases. But it is really telling that we've seen to bubble those sort of administrative challenges up to the top, and peeling those off with these tools is really giving a good way to leverage the solutions, rather than focusing on something very small which doesn't have a lot of impact or a lot of meaningful change in the agency. And so those sort of top use cases are coming up to the top.
Totally. Trying to streamline things as much as possible, I think, is a key thing that we've been hearing from customers too. So that's awesome. Any final thoughts, or maybe just based on your conversations with different agencies, is there a topic that's come to mind that you wish agencies were thinking more of, or perhaps looking more to the future for, or just any final things that you want to call out here?
Yeah, I would just say that it's important to continue to learn and be curious. The more that you sort of ignore or restrict your attention to it, the more challenging it's going to be. The space is evolving rapidly, but we're here. There's a lot of people that are very interested in the space and that are following it closely. So I would just encourage people to do. I know it's challenging. Everybody's got strapped for time, but I would encourage people to just continue to learn and be curious about the space as a whole.
Absolutely. Well, Doug, thank you again for joining. We appreciate everybody listening in to the third episode of our webinar series here. Again, any feedback or thoughts or topics that you want to have covered in future episodes, please just let us know. Doug, thanks again for your time, and appreciate everybody for jumping on.